Well, I'm live again, and it looks like my co-pilot over there is absent again. Let me check on him and see if he's gonna make it. If not, might be trying to fly solo again tonight, and I promise I'm going to try not to hit the finish button so there won't be quite as much chaos as the attempt last week at doing a show. Okay, so Duke just texted he's on the way. So I'm going to sit here and ramble a little bit. I was actually doing a deep dive into this HB 608 from Louisiana. The core purpose of this bill is the Louisiana Atmospheric Protection Act, apparently to ban chemtrails, not condensation trails, to ban chemtrails. And I was further intrigued that uh, there's some language in the bill that mandates infrastructure monitoring and also mandates. Let me get down here and read this part of it real quick. So it also mandates. Where is it? It mandates fiber optic infrastructure. So anyway, I'm trying to dig a little more into that. I literally just started reading this before I started the show. So let's see. We've got about 18 people watching. Y'all make sure and let me know in the comments. There we go. There's some comments. I see Val Baker. Hello, Mr. Baker. Right now I am flying solo, but Mr. Lowry says he is on the way. So hopefully he will be able to join in the fun. So we've got several topics we're going to talk about tonight. First up was Charles Jacobs. I mean, like I got right here in the notes, he is just the gift that keeps on giving. So we're going to do a little memory lane about that. We're also going to review the city council meeting. Initially, I didn't really have it in the notes to review, but there were actually a couple of interesting things in the city council meeting. So we're going to review that. Of course, they approved the BBT, the Bossier Press Tribune, as the journal of record. Again, we were kind of hoping that maybe John Settle would try to get in on that deal with the Inquisitor and Focus SB, but I guess he didn't. So I don't know. Anyway, so we'll try to do all that. I went to the Bossier Republican Executive Committee meeting and basically got what is the term? Is it railroaded into being back on the executive committee meeting to fill a vacant seat? Anyway, so was sworn in on that, so that'll be a lot of fun. But we had Sammy Wyatt there, who is challenging Bill Cassidy's Senate seat, as well as, of course, Dr. Fleming, who we had on a few weeks ago. And it was kind of interesting with the comments and the question and answer there. So let me see who all's in. Oh, look at this. We have an international fan. Colonel Crockett says he's coming in from Scotland. See, we have global reach now here on Bossier Watch. Duke is missing out on the one evening we've got somebody from across the pond watching our show. I mean, we should feel so privileged to have people jaunting around good old Scotland. Or is that good merry old England or whatever? Anyway, good to see you, Colonel Crockett. So glad you're joining in. Mark, Duke says he's on the way. He's going to slide into home plate and slide into his chair here in a few minutes. I'm kind of trying to just delay and ad lib a little bit if y'all hadn't noticed. Let's see. Who else is here? Chris Chandler's here. Cindy Ulrich is here. Laura Rexford is here. Good to see all of y'all. So anyway, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead. Let me double check my notes and see where I am. And we will probably go ahead and do the intro, and then we'll come back. Maybe Duke will be here by then. If not, we'll get right into looking at some of the city council meeting, and we'll get going from there. Hello, Mr. Cheatham. Good to see you. Glad to have you in. I saw you when I was watching the city council meeting, reviewing it a little while ago. I saw, looks like you were at the city council meeting. Yes, Cassie, we're going to have to dock Duke's pay. But 0 times 0 is, well, still 0. So I don't know how exactly we're going to figure out some way to dock it. Oh, there he is. We can't talk about him too much anymore. Everybody quit talking and commenting about Duke. Are you there, Mr. Lowry? Mr. Lowry is here, but he is apparently frozen in time.
Am I frozen? Okay, wait a minute.
Oh,
I
well,
got to
I got
find
you
you.
now.
There you
I got you now.
go. Frozen in time. Okay, I like it.
Yes. We were just talking about you, that's all.
Wasn't that a rock song like Frozen in Time or something? Hello, everybody. Sorry, I am late. As you know, I'm probably no, I wouldn't probably. Actually, I'm out trying to raise funds to pay for trial lawyers and all the other people out there in the world that are no good dirtbags trying to feed off of us hardworking good old Americans out here. You know.
Yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't say any comments that I saw the video of last night. If you want to bring that up, you can. But do we need to start like a GoFundMe thing or a Bossier Watch local GoFundMe for you, Mr. Lowry, to take on these people that are bottom feeding off of the billboard lawyers?
No, no, no. We're not going to go there. But I mean, I'm just going to vaguely gripe, and but when the time is right, I'm probably going to give some advertisement to some people in the community, and well, let's just say their trips to church on Sunday probably aren't going to be real fun for them in the future. But that's okay. That's
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Could be interesting. Could be interesting. All right. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about Jacobs, and I've got a few more notes that I actually uploaded the city council meeting and put a couple of comments in there with some interesting stuff if you have time tonight. And then I figured we'd talk about Sammy's deal at the RPEC last night, and I think you had some stuff from one of the legislative meetings, committee meetings, or whatever.
Yeah, hey, it's that time of the year where there's a ton of bills. I mean, and look, I, I I started to get some legislators to come on here and talk about some of the legislation that's flowing through here. But the truth of the matter is it's that time of the year getting down on the end when you're begging for people to call down to support or oppose this bill or that bill. And frankly, there's so much legislation flowing through there right now that's consequential. There's a lot of debating. I really don't think the legislators even really get a chance to read their emails at this point because there's so much haggling, arguing, and the like going on. Well, tonight, we've been talking in the past about carbon capture. We've talked a little bit about the litigiousness of our state and insurance and all that stuff. Well, there was some interesting dialogue regarding one bill in the House Natural Resources Committee today that kind of put it in some regular terms. And it was so good that even the governor came down to the committee to weigh in and testify. And when I
Wait,
tell you
was
it
it on
was
the Kim?
colorful.
Was it on the chemtrail deal, or which one was it?
No, 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 it wasn't over the chemtrail, but ironically, again, and the reason I want to highlight this is to kind of show people what happens down there and how it's another uh, quick glimpse into how the sausage is made. People don't realize a lot of times the majority of stuff happens right at the end. And in this case, you've got two major things that were put into a bill that was semi related, but really kind of sort of unrelated, but was put in at the last minute to try to get it through. And they are of major consequence. And one guest who's been on our show before he was the lone person to oppose it, and he called that out for exactly what it is, sliding it in at the last minute. Danny McCormick was in the middle of this, and a lot of you may be thinking it was Danny that was the opposition. No, it wasn't Danny that was the opposition.
I'm intrigued because
Interestingly,
I've not seen this yet. Well, and I will say this too. Look, I gave credit in one of the Bossier Watch posts, but this bill about the banning, basically banning journalists or whatever, and data gathering uh, um, around the polling places after people have voted. Got to say, Cruz actually was drilling the legislator with a few questions about that. So I got to give him a little credit for that. Maybe we'll discuss that for a few minutes.
Yes, he did. I remember seeing that clip, and I actually wanted us to show that because, I mean, Krispy Kreme deserves credit when credit's due. I agree. And
Right.
he was hitting on all cylinders. And I got to tell you, Raymond Cruz did a great job on that examination, I would say.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at that when we come back from the break. Folks, y'all know the drill. I'm going to hit the countdown and all that. That gives you about 2.5, 3 minutes to text some friends, let them know we're online. We have an international audience tonight from Scotland. So, hey, there's that. But y'all let everybody know we're online. We're going to be rambling for at least a few minutes. And, who knows where it'll end up. I'm going to hit the button right now, Mr. Lowry. We will be back in a few minutes. Everybody tag and share. How about that?
A lot of the back office on the politicians that they think walk on water, they would be shocked. There's an old wound from a knife in my back that just is giving me heck lately, and it's just really irritating, so I have to kind of wiggle around a little bit.
And I titled it A Shot Across the Bow of the Good Old Boys.
Just, they feel helpless, they don't feel heard, they have nowhere to turn.
Some Republicans as well believe that government has the answers. And let me tell y'all something. I don't know anything government does well. Nothing.
Aren't there laws that say that you have public meetings so that the public can have accountability of their elected officials?
As a member of the media, I'm very concerned about what I've just heard.
Well, I'm not thinking Star Wars at all. I'm thinking zombie apocalypse. Oh, folks coming from the border down there?
Yeah, it's going to border. It's actually going to Mexico, the buses.
Doesn't mean they interpret it the same way that I do. For instance, the Second Amendment. I take it very literally. That's been interpreted different ways in the court system all the way up to SCOTUS. We're still right now combined on both pages and YouTube at 264 people watching. That is amazing, folks. Through conscious, shocking action, which in turn would enrich sitting city council members Scott Irwin and David Montgomery Jr.
In theory, it's an every week thing. We got to double check and make sure it's like a miracle any of this actually works. This live broadcast is brought to you by the Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 25 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting. Reach out to Julie Ferris. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And folks sharing information and watching out. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. And here we are, and I am trying to share out to a couple of groups as we speak. And I understand you may have a little issue with talking tonight, so I want everybody to know that if Duke slurs a few words, it's probably, hopefully, not because he's having a stroke or anything.
Yeah, no, I did have a little bit of a dental issue and had to get a crown, and so anyway,
Yeah.
it's just giving me a little bit of
Yeah, not trying to call you out, but just letting everybody know that if we seem a little off tonight, we're not totally crazy, just partially crazy.
Yeah, so hey, we've talked in some of our past shows, Rex, and we've talked about how a lot of our folks around here are in government are all hot and bothered and excited about more solar.
Right.
They're,
Yeah, solar
they're
here, solar there, solar everywhere.
What would you say if I told you that us here in our community, we ain't nothing but a bunch of liberals?
Well, all right. So I will admit that I bought one of those Blue Eddy brands just because I've read the reviews and like this particular model, but there are plenty of other good models. As a matter of fact, Harbor Freight actually has a good one now, by the way. But anyway, a little battery backup deal so that, and I've talked about this before, so that if the power goes out again for like a week, like it did a year or two ago, I've got my gas generator, my battery backup deal, and I'm going to redneck our, power situation. I got plenty of gas and plenty of fuel and all that. But I did buy a solar panel that will deliver nearly 150 watts to help recharge it, and I can chain several of those together. And oddly enough, sounds like a plug for Harbor Freight, but they have nice foldable solar panels that are portable. Granted, they're a little more expensive, but they have nice ones that are well built. And I'm probably going to get an extra one or two of those just in case. These days with SWEPCO, we just seems like we certainly can't depend on solar and all that for all of our energy needs, of course, but we can't even really depend on SWEPCO, it seems like, and this SPP and all these other organizations to keep the power going that we pay for.
Yeah, I don't know. I tell you, I don't know. That old terminology of wag the dog. I don't know who's wagging the dog. I really don't know. I don't know which way we're going here or what. But what I do know is that what I said earlier, that actually, who knew that us here in Northwest Louisiana, we're all the bunch of liberals. And why do I say we're all the bunch of liberals? We're now the liberals because did you know that California now is moving away from solar?
Oh, wait a minute. So, again, Louisiana is behind the times. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, California's done figured it out, and we call that the left coast. But yet here we are in Louisiana, and especially in Northwest Louisiana, and we're all about, government subsidies of more solar power. But look, I don't want anybody to take my word for it. I put a link in the
All right. Well,
things to show exactly what I'm talking about.
All right. So let me get this link pulled up, but I want you to clarify those. So when you say government subsidies, are you referring to the tax rebates or whatever that people sometimes get for, and I think it was available at one time either through the feds or through the state for putting up like solar panels. Is that what you're calling a subsidy, or is it funding of businesses to
Wait
put
a
up
minute.
these massive solar farms? Clarify for me.
Let me say this in Halton terminology.
Okay.
When you tax the people and then you turn around and take the benefits of those tax proceeds and give them to a business to do something that is supposedly in the interest of everybody else, but ultimately turns into a boondoggle. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You're picking winners and losers. You're taking our tax dollars. You're giving them to somebody to prop some specific business up, picking winners and losers, but not really even picking winners and losers. That's not even it when it comes to the solar thing, because not everybody's doing solar. But in this case, we're taking tax dollars, or in the cases of some of these solars, we're cutting them breaks by not taxing them and giving them breaks to provide electricity back into the system to be sold to you that you'll pay taxes on, and then you're going to also pay the taxes, to the port to subsidize that business. I mean, it's
almost
ridiculous.
Well, it's almost kind of like those ITEP programs, or giving a particular business a tax waiver or whatever for a certain amount of time if they promise to bring in 200 jobs, and very rarely do those businesses actually live up to their hype. I mean, is it almost kind of like that in your opinion?
Just like that. But here's the thing. Why do we have to go down the same yellow brick road that California has already went down and figured out? Why is it that we have to do it ourselves to figure out whether it works or it doesn't work? And again, I'm not saying take my word for it. I think we should take the word of somebody from California.
Well,
and a real case scenario.
All right. Well, let me hit play. So let me see if we get audio, and hopefully this will work.
Why did the government fund a 5-square-mile laser death ray that kills 6,000 birds a year? That is Ivanpah, a solar farm in the Mojave Desert. And the bird apocalypse isn't even the biggest part of this boondoggle. So 15 years ago, Google, NRG Energy, and BrightSource Energy got together for this idea. They would sell solar power to PG&E and California Edison until 2039. But they needed funding. So Bechtel, who's a big government contractor, helped them get a $1.6 billion loan from the Department of Energy. See all those mirrors? Yeah, there's 350,000 of them, and each one is the size of a garage door. They reflect sunlight onto boilers 450 feet high as part of the solar thermal process. The project promised to create 1,000 construction jobs and power 140,000 homes. And that didn't happen. In theory, everyone would benefit, from workers and local communities to politicians pushing green energy. Now, the facility opened in 2014, and it didn't take long to realize that mirrors attract bugs and birds eat bugs, and mirrors themselves get really hot. The reflected rays at Ivanpah literally singed birds to death mid-air, leaving clouds of smoke called streamers. The project was also terrible for desert tortoises and destroyed irreplaceable, pristine desert habitat. But the real problem was about power. Ivanpah only operated at half capacity. Apparently, officials hadn't considered things like weather or equipment challenges impacting energy production. You know, like they should have. NRG said it could take years for Ivanpah to hit its annual energy goals. In the meantime, they'd use natural gas to operate the boilers. So much so that they even needed state approval to increase the gas limit. Turns out the sun didn't shine as much as everyone hoped, and the facility could no longer compete with newer, more efficient technology. Today, Ivanpah employs 61 people, but soon it will be 0. PG&E ended their contract 15 years early, and Ivanpah will close 2 of its 3 units by 2026. For the American taxpayers, it's Solyndra 2.0. So I guess this is good news for the birds? What do you think? Why did the government...
So I got to say, Mr. Lauer, I've got 2 thoughts on this. The first being the mention of PG&E and the movie
Aaron Brockovich.
Bingo. And Julia Roberts as Aaron Brockovich. I had, would be remiss without mentioning that. But I just had this thought when she mentioned it was frying the birds. And as they came down smoking, they were calling the trail streamers.
Streamers.
So, somehow, can't we incorporate this and maybe send some of these deals up to the Midwest where they're doing the heated lakes for ducks? I mean, I don't know how, but that thought just crossed my mind. With the heated ponds for ducks and the streamers, birds being zapped.
Well, look, here again, I mean, you had government. I mean, she talked about it. This thing was subsidized $1 billion, the government subsidized a loan for $1 billion. I'm sure at 0% interest. I mean, these politicians and they get on this grandstanding and make things to be, it's rainbows and unicorns. And then in the end, guess what? Somebody lost on that deal. And you know who ended up losing? It was going to be the taxpayers or whoever subsidized that $1 billion loan to do that whole project. And it's the same damn thing. But what gets me here is and I'll give California credit on this. California is ahead of the curve on countless things, environmentally as well. They're way out ahead of everybody else. I give them credit for that. I'll give you an example. Steel shot for hunting waterfowl. They were one of the first people to raise the alarm for the decline of waterfowl or the detriment to waterfowl and hawks and birds from lead shot and forcing people to start hunting with steel shot. That was kind of come out of California. And there's organizations like Ducks Unlimited and people who are supposed to be the most knowledgeable in the world that know about these things. They fought it. The gun manufacturer or the ammunition manufacturer, they fought it. But as it would turn out, they were absolutely 100% right. So while I hate the leftist agenda that comes out of California, I have to at the same time give them credit that they get it right every now and then. And in this case right here, they're getting it right on solar through experience, but yet that knowledge that they're gaining from experience, we're not utilizing that. So it's either we're doing it because we're ignorant or we're doing it because we don't care and it's about the grift. That's for everybody watching the show to decide which one it is.
Okay, so y'all mark this show number 260. We're somewhere around 300 shows in total, but that's a whole long story. But show number 260, Duke Lowry, a literal card-carrying Republican, is siding with the left-wing liberal agenda from California, including banning lead shot, which I might say there were some studies against that narrative. And luckily, they haven't come out against the fishing community yet, because while a lot of us use the alternative materials for weights and all that, a lot of folks still use lead weights.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the thing is on this solar thing, government shouldn't be funding it. We shouldn't be giving tax breaks to it, to put more of this crap in there. I mean, look at what California has experienced. They show that it doesn't work. I mean, the wind farms, the doesn't work. We shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. Look, we are in complete agreement on that. And look, if private industry wants to do it on your own, or some private enterprising person wants to develop a viable business model and can make this work without government subsidies, go for it and become the next Elon Musk. I'm all for that.
Okay, I'm going to throw a curveball here. So all of y'all watching the show, because I think I would agree with this. So, Louisiana had that program where if all of y'all watching the show, if you put solar panels on the roof of your house, and then they would measure how much energy would be put back into the system, it would offset what your electrical bill was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that was a beneficial program for the state to give you a break if you spent money to put this system in on your house, that the cost of doing that, the state give you a tax refund for doing that because you were putting energy back into the system? Do you think that would be a good deal?
All right. So, and we want to hear from y'all in the comments as well, but let me give you my knee-jerk reaction to that. So I would say I am not against that, because ultimately the taxpayers, in us as individuals, pay all the taxes. Look, the fact of the matter is corporations and businesses do not pay taxes. Now, what I mean by that is, in the end, hold on. Now hear me out. In the end,
I'm just saying, I watched a city council meeting today and last 2 weeks ago, and there were sure some people screaming about paying taxes.
Yeah, but what were they going to have to do? They're going to have to pass it along to their customers. Always. So in the end, the consumer, us individuals, pay all taxes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So look, your mortgage company or whatever taxes that you have to pay as a mortgage company, those taxes that you pay, or you and Kara does, whatever, are derived from revenue generated by your clients, period. So in the end, it's always the consumer. That's why I say taxes, corporations or businesses do not actually pay the taxes, because they're going to derive that from the revenue generated from sales to us consumers and taxpayers. So in the end, we're paying for it all. Now, with that line of thinking, and I'm sure Sadow's probably raising his eyebrows right now in the comments, but along that line of thinking, I don't have a problem with getting a reduced tax bill or tax break as a consumer, as an individual, for using solar panels if I'm going to go out there and use my earned money to purchase said solar panels, and then hopefully, if I do it right and set the system up right, even be able to sell back to the grid. I'm personally not opposed for that. These boondoggles like this, where they're toasting birds midair, I'm against the taxpayer dollars subsidizing all that. If you want to do it as a business, use your own private funding. That's all I'm trying to say.
Hey, you got Jeff Sadow to respond.
Okay, so let's see what he says. Actually, I've got to go switch screens. But anyway, we'll check it here in a minute because he's got some other comments. All right.
Well, look, I mean, bottom line is government again, in my opinion, they're playing in too many, places that they shouldn't be playing in.
Well, and they're so far, they're trillions of dollars in debt, yet, and we got into this, a little bit of that discussion at the RPEC meeting, but they're trillions of dollars in debt, and yet they're handing money out like it's candy to these corporations.
Yeah. Let the free market decide things. And
bingo.
And yeah, let the free market decide things. I mean, and the only thing regarding the taxes, Trump, look, y'all know I'm a Trump sycophant, okay? Whatever. Y'all can hate me, you can love me for it. I don't care, whatever. My opinion is, do you know that the last 2 months, I saw a statistic, and I am going to so butcher this, and everybody somebody is going to correct me, and they're going to rip me. But the last 2 months, do you realize that as a result of the tariffs, we've seen the highest net revenue off of tariffs the last 2 months? I think in the last 50 years was the last 2 months, and he rolled it back. I mean, he's not even implemented everything that he proposed. In just the last 2 months, it's seen the highest net revenue. We've been getting screwed, and our politicians have been giving it away.
Oh, I agree, and they're like you said. Well, actually, you've said many times they're picking the winners and losers, which is not right. Now, I'll say this: the Chinese government doesn't pay the tariffs. Again, who pays the tariffs?
Well, there's
Jeopardy question, bonus points if you get it within 3 seconds. Who pays the tariffs?
The people that hate Donald Trump say that you and I pay the tariffs. That's what they say. They say.
So I want to hear the explanation of how we don't pay them.
So you want to hear the explanation for how we don't pay them?
Yes.
Well,
in the end, we pay them.
If it was made by an American, okay, the value of it being made by an American, if I need whatever it is, I'm going to pay it. But if it's made by some slave laborer in China that, works for a penny and doesn't have a bill to pay and lives in a damn bamboo hut, how should they be able to send that here to compete against the guy that's got a kid and a family to have to raise? No, that's not apples and oranges. Slave labor, no. We outlawed that. If their way of life is such that they don't limit slave labor, but yet our way of life is that, we disposed of that practice, in the 1800s, and therefore it costs us more because we have a different belief.
But hold on.
You're not comparing apples to oranges. You can't.
And look, we'll have this debate for a few minutes, but you've got to use your own apples and oranges analogy there, because I'm not advocating slave labor, but our definition of slave labor and what
you sure? Are you sure?
And what I never knew
is that I would
slave
be able to
labor?
Put you in that box, but I just did, and I did it. Wasn't even trying.
And what is considered slave labor in other countries are two totally different things. Now, and the fact is, look, the Chinese government itself is overall not very good to their citizens. They're a communist country, blah, 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 all that stuff. Look, I get it, folks. I'm just saying that the value of what we consider good wages here is not the same worldwide because of the differences in the valuations of currency. And here's the deal. In the end, the Chinese government is not, or it doesn't matter, pick the country, Mexico, Canada, it doesn't matter. And I'm not against Trump's tariff policies. I'm actually for them, because here's what it's going to do. It's going to cause a market correction, because the goods and services that come from these other countries that have the higher tariffs imposed on them, which they're going to have to either eat as profit or B, pass along to the consumers, which is likely going to be passed along to the consumers, then we end up paying that. Well, we're not going to pay the higher prices for those goods and services coming from these other countries that are have the high tariffs on them now. So we're going to look for alternative sources for those products and services, which in theory should be American made products and services that don't have the tariffs. And so it begins the market correction. But let's not have any inclinations that it is costing the Chinese government one red cent, except for the fact that they may experience a loss of purchases from the American people because of the high tariffs. That's the way it works.
Yeah, and look, it's been eating at me ever since we kind of got off on this or whatever. But did you know that I think it was just today or yesterday they arrested a student at Michigan, a Chinese student that had shipped to them a not a fungus or a mold or whatever, but it was a pathogen that could be introduced into the environment in the U.S. that they said would cause crop failure to the point that it would reach into the billions to $1 trillion worth of damage. It would cause crop failure to the point that we would have like starvation and all that stuff in the United States. So the point being, the Chinese, we're already at war with them.
Oh, sure.
Trump
I agree
Trump
100%.
is so far ahead of his time on this. Those folks are setting us up to kill us.
But I gotta ask you: was there a tariff on this poison that was shipped in?
I don't know.
All right, so, and I want to be crystal clear from my soapbox a few minutes ago. I fully support Trump's tariffs and understand that there will be short-term pain for longer-term gain. And you can't fix in just a year or 2 years what's been screwed up for decades. So I get it. I am not against Trump's tariffs, but I want everybody to understand how those tariffs actually work. And that it will take, there will have to be ripple actions and ripple effects from those tariffs to be able to correct the trade imbalance.
Oh, now wait a minute. Cassie has a really good point. I got to tell you, I like the point that she just made. She says, I think that the definition of slave labor should be based on our standard if we're going to allow it to be imported to our country. So, what definition of slave labor are we willing to accept? What's acceptable to all of us?
Yeah, let's define in the so I don't disagree with Cassie, but define slave labor.
I think that is an amazing point. I mean, what is acceptable slave labor to all of us?
Look, a lot of people think being a waiter or waitress is slave labor because they see that they only make $2 and something an hour plus tips, and oh my goodness, that's slave labor. Except a good waiter or waitress makes far more than that.
I have to tell you, sadly, I think I know the answer, but I'm not going to say it.
Now, okay.
No,
I'll buy it. You got to give us a hint.
Well, look, it's just like me. I started to use some terminology that you're not supposed to use when you're a social media celebrity or whatever the hell they call us, or just whatever.
On.
But
we're crazy. Remember, it's literally Duke's Crazy Show. We can say what we want because we're labeled as crazy.
Oh, that's right. We're officially crazy. Yeah, so I can say whatever I want. But I don't know. I think too many people nowadays have lost their moral compass. And it's not about what's best for the country, what's best for our community. It's what's best for each individual person's bottom line. I hate to admit this and admit it publicly, but I think the majority of people, when they calculate on everything that they do, it's about their bottom line. Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good people, and there's a lot of them that don't calculate that way. But I believe the majority. I'm just telling you.
I'm not disagreeing with your premise. Here is what I'll say. if you go back and read history, you can find countless instances through the decades or through the founding of our country where people thought about themselves. I mean, you pick any industry and how it was built, and those statements you just made would hold true. Now, the difference is that, and this is going to obviously sound self-serving, but the difference is we have social media, and now we get inundated with it all the time. It is the milk carton theory of missing kids. I've talked about this briefly before, but to remind everybody, back in the 70s, was it 60s and 70s, 80s? I remember seeing some of these milk cartons even in the 80s. They put missing kids on the milk cartons, which sounds like a good thing, right? So, hey, if there's a missing kid and we didn't have the Amber Alerts back then, let's put them on the milk cartons. Everybody will see their faces and can find them. The problem is that's when the perception came up that there were rape vans and at every street corner, and the ice cream man was nothing but a pedophile. And it became literally nearly a hysteria because of perception of it, because people were inundated seeing these milk cartons, even though the stats don't bear that out.
Wait a minute. The ice cream man was a pedophile?
Yes.
Oh.
You can go look it up. So my point is that because folks were inundated with, let's call it mass media, being the milk cartons and other items that they put these missing kids on, people had the perception that, oh my goodness, kidnappings and all that are on the rise astronomically. It's just not true. But that was the perception. Now, you fast forward to now, and we have nearly instant media. A lot of it from, citizen journalists, pundits, whatever you want to call all of us that are doing all of this on social media.
Yeah, but it doesn't
and you get
change.
inundated with those attitudes. And I'm just saying, I don't disagree with you, but I'm just telling you, it's not like everybody was hunky-dory 50 years ago or 100 years ago, and now we have shifted culture that much. It's just simply not true.
I'm not disagreeing with anything that you said, but we say, and we've talked about on the show, as we have dealt with politics on the scale that we have, and we've acknowledged that while the majority of folks that are watching our show, they are well informed, they know about what's going on and the like, but that's because they choose to be informed. That's because all of y'all want to know more about what's going on. You want to be more informed. Not that we're know everything. It's not that at all. I think possibly it's because we present it in a way that's palatable to a regular person. I think that may be the appeal to it, besides my good looks. But anyway, but the thing is that we have also acknowledged that all of y'all combined that follow what the content that we're putting out, and then what you and I believe and what we're saying, we're a minority. We're a small and I hate to say inconsequential, part of it, but that other part of it that doesn't engage and doesn't pay attention, those are the people that I would say are out for their own interests. They've got their head down, and I'm not saying that they're bad people, and maybe they don't know that if they paid more attention, that maybe their bottom line or their well-being at the end of the day would be better off if they made better decisions by being better informed. But I'm just saying the rest of those people are they took the blue pill. They haven't taken the red pill.
But to counter that argument, and then folks, I promise we'll get on with some actual Bossier stuff, but this is a great conversation. So I would say the counterpoint to that is, because I agree with you again on that, except for, you have to remember, you and I are so engaged in political things, we have a skewed perspective of it. We just assume everybody should be engaged and think like us, and that's simply not true. A lot of people just want to go to work every day, come home, see their family, see their kids, go to a baseball game, soccer game, softball game, go fishing, whatever it is. and not
Case
have
in
to worry
point,
about politics.
Case in point, real world example dealing with us. Jeff Sadow, as an example, Jeff Sadow was articulating views before you and I became political. Jeff Sadow was articulating political views and espousing ideas to make people think, about issues that would, in his belief, improve people's lives.
Sure.
And a few people listened. A few people came to, read what he was thinking, what he was putting out, and that has carried on and grown to a point to this day. But there's still, regardless of how many people that he was able to touch over that time frame, and regardless of how many people we were able to touch over this time frame, there's still a large part of our society that they're checked out and they're not going to. Their sole motivation is about themselves, and I don't know how we change that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look, the only way we can change it is, in my opinion, and I'm quite sure you agree with this, is literally why we've been doing this for nearly 300 episodes. And what are we on now? 4 or 5 years, is just simply to get the message and the information out there, and for folks that are watching or listening to digest it. And by the way, I want a squirrel moment for a minute. I want to remind everybody Facebook has instituted their policy of removing live videos after 30 days. So all of our old shows are no longer on Facebook. If you want to see those, hop over to YouTube. We're on just search under Bossier, or search for Bossier Watch under YouTube. Find us there, subscribe there, because all the shows since I think show 50 or 60 or something like that are on YouTube, and I'm eventually going to put the rest. So just remember that. But back to your point, I think the best we can do is we try to get the message out there and alert, educate, whatever you want to call it, folks that are watching our content to know what's going on and what our perception and bias as far as those events is. I mean, look, we don't ambulance chase. We've been sent stories that I consider ambulance stuff, and I think you do too, and we just don't even look into them. It has to have a political, some sort of political tie.
Give you an example, and you'll know, what I'm not going to put it out there, but I'm going to say we were sent, and to whoever sent it to us, we appreciate you sending it to us. But there was an event that took place within the schools here in Bossier,
Right.
here recently. It was framed to us, and in a way, we did our due diligence. We researched the thing that happened, and to our knowledge of what transpired, it was addressed and it was dealt with correctly, and it wasn't worthy of being put out there.
Right.
I'm and
Yeah.
not that the person that sent it to us was wrong or trying to manipulate us or trying to get us to go out on something that wasn't right. No, we don't believe that at all. We think that actually the way they perceived it and what they understood was, we think that's what they actually believe. But we did the research on it, and we have not put it out there and done anything with it, because after we dug into it and got the facts on it, we realized that what was done regarding this incident
Was
was the correct
appropriate.
action.
Yeah, it was appropriate enough. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So yeah, we're not ambulance chasing.
Yeah, we're not. However, speaking of ambulance chasing, let's segue into Jacobs, because he is the gift that keeps on giving. And a lot of you may follow Wade Lovelace on Love Shreveport and Bossier. He does a lot of ambulance chasing, but that's his gig. And I got, I don't know how many messages, text messages, direct messages on Facebook. Everybody, hey, have y'all seen this? you got to share this out and play it and talk about it. So I say we go ahead and let's dive right into Charles Jacobs, and we'll go from there. So give me just a second. Let me do a little clicking here. Hello, Bo.
Yeah, because I have some thoughts on.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's see.
Because it's my office. I'm the city attorney.
But you get us confused with some other people.
What's the number to the marshal?
So this incident happened 5 days ago at Bossier City Hall with the city attorney. Just yelling at us, saying he's not going to give us no liquor license. He assumed that we were some people, we're not. And I tried to explain to him that we never have a liquor license. This is our first time, no obligation. He didn't want to hear us. Started yelling, screaming at us for no reason. This is how business owners getting treated in Bossier City. Imagine getting treated like that from the city attorney. What?
For not leaving when I told you to.
Why we had to leave?
Because it's my office. I'm the city attorney.
But you get us confused with some other people.
What's the number to the marshal?
Well, you get us confused with other
Call
people.
the marshal's office. Are you leaving voluntarily?
I'm leaving, but you getting confused with some other people. You have to double check the document.
If y'all are
We're not, sir.
Quit arguing with me.
Okay.
I just told you in my discussion. You got 2 seconds to get out of this office and exit, or I'm calling. Call the marshal's office.
Call the marshal's
I
office.
think
My favorite quote's coming up.
You know?
No.
Because you get on and confused with some other people.
Quit arguing with me.
We never have a liquor license before, and this is a new application.
Door out.
Door out, baby.
You're coming now. Or you're going to be arrested for remaining after forbidden. Out.
Out for what?
Out.
For what?
For what? Remaining after forbidden.
You're gonna pay for this.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Oh, you're going to pay.
So basically, this.
All right, last bit.
Officer Brian, and he gets feel bad, and he did got in touch with the attorney and explained to them that we are the wrong people, and I don't know why he will talk to us like that.
All right, Mr. Lowry. So I want to hear your take on this,
Okay.
and then I'll give mine.
So I don't quite know how to frame this, but I think I'm going to have to take up for Jacobs a little bit.
Interesting.
And
Go ahead.
What I would propose to people, did anybody find it odd that the video that you just watched, did anybody what happened before that video started? What happened, kind of towards the end? I mean, my point is did anybody notice that the video was edited? So
Well, it was highly edited.
It was highly edited. So, in all fairness to Charles Jacobs, I mean, look, I'm no big fan of Charles Jacobs, but I have to call balls and strikes, and I'm just saying, what was the discussion that took place before Charles Jacobs was saying you need to leave my office?
I agree.
What was the dialogue there? I mean, and you don't know that. Now the guy was saying that you have us confused with somebody else. We've never had an application. We've never had nothing. Was there more discussion about that was not? I don't know. Maybe there wasn't. But I think that if somebody was videoing that part, they were probably videoing what was taking place before. So
yeah, look, we're not that far apart on this, so I agree with you that there probably is more video to it. We don't know that for sure. Again, that's straight off of Love Shreveport Bossier's Facebook page, and usually we don't share their content because, again, they do a lot of ambulance chasing, but Wade's getting into some more political stuff, let's just say, and that's a whole other story. But I agree with you that we really need more context to it before we completely hang Jacobs. Now, I'll just say, I think Jacobs is an ass. I don't think he's a great attorney. I think he sucked as a judge most of the time, maybe not in every case. And I have no love lost for Charles Jacobs. The man didn't even know whether or not his own city council that he advises approves using Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, that's just ridiculous, among a lot of other things. I've got a whole litany here. He makes over 120,000 a year, if our memory serves me correctly. Sat you can correct me in the comments. I think both he and Richard Ray just got a raise not too long ago, in addition to the city employee raises. So there's a lot of things about Jacobs that I don't like. If y'all want to remember, it was Tuesday, September the 7th of 2021, when Jacobs says, and I quote, "There's going to be a time when I will run over that son of a bitch with a Zamboni," referring to John Settle, for which he never, to my knowledge, apologized to John Settle. He did issue some sort of quasi kind of apology to the news media, but I don't think he ever issued that apology to John Settle. Not to mention the run-ins we've had with him, and some of y'all that have attended the city council meetings and the charter commission meetings and all that have had with Jacobs. So I have zero like for Charles Jacobs. But I do agree with you. We need a little more context before we completely hang him on that. The demeanor of the gentleman videoing, who his name was Radad Al-Madari, I hope I said that correctly, with R&D Convenience. He was the guy turning in the paperwork, or at least the name on the papers, let's put it that way. And he seemed to have a relatively calm demeanor. So, but again, like you said, Duke, we don't know the full context of it.
So the guy videoing, what was his name again?
Well, Radad Al-Madari of R&D Convenience. I don't know if
and he was the guy doing he was the guy doing the application.
To be clear, that's the name on the application. Now, I don't know if in fact that was him turning in the application and running the video camera or phone or whatever he was using. I don't know for a fact that was him. I just know that's the name on that application.
Well, D.D. White Clark has made a post regarding a Jose Hernandez, and it didn't.
Well,
look, Jose Hernandez says to me that might be of Spanish origin, and the voice that I heard didn't sound neither Spanish nor Indian or.
Well, all right. So let me.
Whatever it sounded.
Let me. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Let me fast forward, but. One of these shots along here you can clearly see, because I think in Love Shreveport Bosier's post and Wade's post, he said the gentleman didn't want to be identified, but you can clearly see in the video right there the name. All you gotta do is flip the video around, and then there's another spot there. So again, I don't know if that was him personally. I just know that's the name on the video right there on the application.
Yeah, well, I can't take a position. I'm not until I know what took place before. I don't know. Something tells me, I just have a sneaking suspicion. There was a lot of people aggravated about this event, and
a lot of people were pissed.
A lot of people were pissed,
and look, rightfully so, because if we base Jacob's actions in that video, again, not having the full context, but if we look at it through the lens of Jacobs's past actions we've seen in city council meetings and hidden meetings when they're not supposed to be having meetings, and audio that was leaked out and all that, I would say it's right on par with Jacobs's typical demeanor, being a complete ass. But again, we would like for Love Shreveport Bossier or whoever shot the video release the full video if it's available, so that we can have a little better context and see what led up to Jacobs turning into an ass, which is usually his default anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Love Shreveport Bossier has an obligation to release the rest of the video. I mean, if
they have it.
If I appreciate it correctly, they released the name of the person that made the video against their request. Is that not correct?
Well, now let me clarify. I don't know that.
Yeah,
because
what is the deal on that?
in Wade's original post under Love Shreveport Bossier, he said, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that the owner or applicant or whoever shot the video didn't want to come forward. The only problem is it's right there in the video, so we had people sending it to us. It's kind of easy to take the video and flip it around and see who was on the application. Again, not necessarily the gentleman that was conversing with Jacobs. So a little more context would help set the tone for that whole thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I don't want to, I'm not here to carry Jacob's water, but I'm just saying I have to have more than what I've saw so far. I've got to know more. I can't come to a conclusion.
So a lot of people with their torches and pitchforks out have been calling for Jacobs' head and Tommy to fire Jacobs. Folks, newsflash, that ain't happening. Tommy ain't firing Jacobs. He's already done enough dumb stuff. He should have been fired 10 times over, and he ain't been fired yet. Tommy's certainly not going to fire this. Tommy's too busy taking selfies and cutting ribbons to worry about what Jacobs is doing. But just to let y'all know, so I've got a little bit of history here, and I'll just run down the list real quick. Jacobs was hired during the July 7th, 2021 special council meeting. He was supposed to be approved before then, but he gave some advice to Tommy on firing former Bossier City Police Department Chief Shane McWilliams, and the city council, the good old boys, wanted to delay his confirmation for a week, so they did it in a special meeting, blah, blah, blah. They also voted in that same meeting to rehire our good friend Richard Ray. And I also want to point out, at that meeting on Thursday, Chandler said, and I quote, in reference to Shane Cheatham and the whole CAO debacle, quote, Shane is still my man. We haven't forgotten, Tommy, that you turned your back on Shane Cheatham. All right. So that gives a little bit of the deal. Now, the thing is, Tommy can appoint the city attorney. The city council has to approve him. The city council also sets the budget and thus the salary of the city attorney's office.
Standing with who stands with you is not a one-way street. That is the one thing that I do appreciate about the good old boys. The good old boys, they do sure stand with who stands with them. They do.
They march lockstep, don't they?
They support each other, and they back them, and they help them. They make sure their plate is full. They do.
Now, there are a whole lot of other reasons that Tommy should absolutely move to fire Charles Jacobs, and I would argue Richard Ray too. I mean, I just go down the laundry list. The whole Katie Bell with the Keen Miller law firm thing, the 2024 meeting in October when he didn't know about Robert's rules. Not that that's a huge issue, but it's just silly. The most recent thing, the March 25th parking lot gate, where Jacobs and Richard Ray approved the parking lot for Bossier Power Equipment and Scott's Audio without any council approval. As a matter of fact, they were trying to slip that one under the rug until Brian Hammonds brought it up in the middle of a meeting, much to everybody's chagrin. And you're going to love when I play this one here in a few minutes, Duke. Charles Jacobs made a revelation about free speech today and how free speech should happen. Yes, he did.
Okay.
So I figure we'll get into that here in a few minutes. So here's the deal. We want to hear from y'all in the comments. Number one, do you like or dislike Charles Jacobs? Based on that video, which most of you have seen because we shared it out on Bossier Watch as well, what do you think about Charles Jacobs? Do you think that there should be, if it's available, more of the video released to give us a little better context of this before we decide to, do the proverbial march down to City Hall and start picketing Charles Jacobs' office? What do you folks think in the comments? Let us know. Because, I'm no fan of him either, but I do see Duke's point that we need a little more context. All right.
Yeah, I mean, look, we gotta be sure on it, and I just I don't want people to get out there on a limb and then there's some more context that you just don't know. And something tells me there might be more here. I mean, given past history, we can easily jump to the conclusion of what it is, but just probably better back it up a little bit. Hey, I do want to. I don't know what this means. I want to point it out. Local poop show.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm being fair to the show, not using a curse word because that's supposed to be offensive and makes people not want to watch the show. So anyway, made a post. Well, dadgum, it's gone now.
Which
I
one?
can't see it.
The stop backing down?
Yes, that one. And I
Here.
was curious as to exactly what they were meaning about backing down. How are we backing down by not? I don't understand that one.
Yeah, I don't either, because I literally just made fun of Jacobs again, which I've done ad nauseum on the show. So clarify what you mean by stop backing down on what we say.
Yeah, what are we backing down on? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't. I mean, look, I'm no fan of Jacobs by me saying that we need to see more of what comes out of this. I'm just saying this is a dot your I's, cross your T's situation. And
well, look, let me crouch it by saying this. In the videos that we release as Bossier Watch, or even sometimes as Bossier Term Limits, in all the term limit stuff, why do you think I try to provide the whole conversation or most of the conversation and do the transcription? And I don't really slice and dice unless they're, seconds long pauses that have no meaning in it anyway. And I'm not saying that Wade did any of that. Maybe that's all the video he had to work with, and that's fine too. I'm just saying if that video is available, and I think Duke, again, to rehash it, that's all we're saying. If that video is available, let's see what set Jacobs off, or maybe he was just in a bad mood. Maybe the guy walked in, Jacobs lit into him. But we don't know and can't tell from that particular segment of video. And then we'll go get our pitchforks and torches.
Okay, they're saying I cuss. I say whatever I want to do. Do it. I mean, look, I do on occasion bust out there with the cuss words, and I do cuss. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect or whatever. No, not at all. I cuss like a sailor.
Yeah. And look, the only thing we try to do is refrain from the F-bombs on the show. That's pretty much our
there are some people that take offense to that, and we're really not trying to offend nobody. I mean, look, we're not trying to just be soft on everybody either. I mean, look, this show's not nice. We are not making friends with this show, except for all of the majority of you that are watching. There's a lot of you that are watching that you hate our guts. You just assume see us drowned out here in the lake. I get that, and that's fine. But at the same time, if there are people that, let's just say, we use language that is offensive to them, or they find cussing offensive, and that runs them away, and then therefore they don't get the information, that's counterproductive to the overall goal, which is to change government, in our community. So, I'm going to try to not use anything that may offend somebody as best I can. But sometimes I got to tell you, when I get wound up, it pisses me off, and I'm just not going to hold back. And I don't care at that point. And,
Very true. Yeah.
And
we've had a few moments on this show in 260 plus episodes. All right. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can switch screens again. And let's go to the meeting today. I think this is the right point. I want you to listen carefully to what Jacobs espouses in this. I think, Duke, I'm going to have to try to help you pick your jaw up off the floor when he says this. Listen up.
Jacobs, are you aware of any type of case law when it comes to political advertising?
I've discussed the issue with Carlotta and some with Neil Irwin, I believe, who represents the MPC. I think we all agree that political speech, political advertisement is the most protected form of speech. And while you can have certain time, place, and manner restrictions on it, it's treated very carefully, just as you said, and so it has to be the least restrictive provisions possible in order to, again, allow, the free expression of political speech and political candidacy. So Ms. Brown and I have actually discussed that, and along with the MPC's counsel, Neil Irwin, and we are working and looking at that.
Did you hear what he just said? The least restrict. I mean, he was right about that. The same man that was in that video from Love Shreveport and Bossier just said that. After all the council meetings and term limits drama and all that, he just sat there and said that. And he's correct. We could go back and rewind this video and play Phyllis reading the little disclaimer that she does at the beginning of every meeting about boisterous and impertinent, which would not stand up under First Amendment scrutiny if anybody ever really had the money and wherewithal to press that, would not stand up to First Amendment scrutiny. But he was right about that. And let me set the stage for it, just for the full context. They were discussing, and you've probably seen on some of the news outlets, this MPC sign issue, the electronic billboards and all that sort of thing. And Chris Smith had a question or an issue with it as it relates to political speech and political signs. And so that's the context of that line of questioning.
But as I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm seeing, I'm looking at everybody's comments, and I appreciate all of y'all's comments. And it is rich what he's saying. I agree, because when you think about in the context of, this guy has been a judge up there in Benton on cases. There's been outcomes that have been adverse to people that are watching this show. Like you cited the Zamboni. He said, one of these days, he's going to get run over by a Zamboni and things like that. But I'm not carrying his water, but I have to point out, this is also the same guy that sat right there in that chair right there. And I can show you where he stated for a fact, you have a valid petition, certified. I mean, he said the right thing. He did the right thing.
Yeah, he did. Well, but his back was against the wall, and there was hardly any wiggle room for it to get out. He is also the same guy that instituted the decimation, shall we say, of the first petition. And look, on a technicality, he was correct. In the spirit of it, he was not. But he absolutely helped orchestrate that ordeal. So you're right. I don't know. I'll say this. I was with somebody this weekend, and we were having a conversation about Jacobs. And this particular person is friends with Jacobs. I don't know if runs with Jacobs would be the right term, but they're on a very friendly basis. It was espoused to me how great of an attorney Jacobs was on cases. And in the 26 JDC, and my simple reply, and this guy is a friend of mine, my simple reply was, if that's the best we got in Bossier Parish, we're in a hell of a lot of trouble, because he sucks. Now, but he was right about what he just said. So, we got to give credit where credit's due. Now, I want to fast forward, because this will be the part where we kind of get into the meeting for at least a little bit, wasn't a whole lot. And Duke, I know that, your deal this morning, you're not feeling great. So just let me know, how you're doing. But anyway, I want to go through Carlotta's explanation. It's only about a minute or two of this sign deal. So everybody take a listen.
So right now, there's no limitation with regards to quantity of signs. So if a constituent wants to put 10 signs in their yard, the only limitation is the size. So if they want, they can have as many as they want. It's the same with commercial property, except that they don't have a limitation of size. And that limitation on size is strictly because residential subdivisions are more dense, their visibility from the street is a lot less. And so we didn't want the big, billboard type signs in people's yards obstructing view and visibility and things of that nature. But right now, there is no limitation on the quantity nor the message.
Did you hear that? No limitation. Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out, let me put my little pointer. Pay attention to, recognize these guys, Duke? Guess what they're waiting on?
Well, y'all are going to have to wait because Bo has to announce the arrival of Kara.
Oh, he's doing his job. Yes.
He is warning her. I'm trying to toggle the mute button here, so
don't worry about it.
But he's trying to warn her that if you proceed into my area, you're gonna die.
He's trying to earn his dog food and earn his keep.
But look, yeah, definitely 5D. I really appreciate that comment. And an old friend of mine used to say, some people know how to put a pool shot together. And I would say that collectively, all of us, y'all watching this show and our show, some of the other folks in media, Sadow, Marriott, um, collectively, and if I miss anybody, look, you can't name everybody because it's a collective of people. But I would say that collectively, we have all put a pool shot together to change politics in Bossier. It is 5D. We have control of the direction of government, and it all hinges on all of us participating. All these guys on this front row here, you know why they're there? They're all there on that front row because of all of y'all. That's why they're there. They're there because all of y'all took an interest in affecting change. You took action. You did something. You did something more than just tune in every Tuesday night to see these two jerks talk about stupid politics. You actually got involved. You did something. You had conversations with your neighbors. You talked about politics. That's what did it. That's what made the difference. And your continued involvement, the 3D and the 5D, that's the 5D is y'all. The 5D is all of y'all continuing to stay engaged and to continuing to talk. And now the people, and I hate to cast this in a bad way, but if you agree with all of them that they should be able to give and I don't know how many units, 100 families in an apartment complex, a rate of, let's just say, $36 for 100 families for services from city government for what one house has to pay. If you think that's right, then I think you stand with those guys right there. But if you stand with everybody else, the majority of the citizens of this city, you think that everybody should pay their way, that there shouldn't be any, favoritism. I'm just saying they've been accustomed to getting a benefit for a long period of time. And look, what I'm saying the truth here. And this don't make me any friends. Some of those people sitting there I'm friends with. And I'm having to talk against friends. That doesn't make me more popular, and it doesn't do me any favors at all to say this. But they have gotten the benefits of the way government has went for decades now. That's changed, and that's changed because of all of you.
So
that's the bottom line.
Speaking of that, that's a perfect segue. Let's jump up to Amanda as this is kind of interesting because Hammonds and Vince walk out. But let's listen to Amanda kind of run through the numbers a little bit and pretty much explain this. Here we go.
Hey, Amanda, let me step out first.
Oh, yes.
Before you start.
You don't want to listen to her or what?
Oh, so Hambone and who got up and left? Oh, Maggio.
Vince. Yeah. Now, remember, Vince was the savior of all these guys a week ago. So I'm not really, maybe, Brian, if you watch the show or whatever, maybe you can let us know what the purpose of walking out of the meeting was. I'm not really sure. But here we go.
All right, so regarding the beautification fees, it's now designated as a public works fee on the utility bills. This was part of the proposed budget that was presented to the council. Council received a copy September 15th, and then we had a budget workshop where this information was discussed publicly on October 8th of 2024. And then the budget, the first reading was October 22nd, and the public hearing and second reading was on November 5th of 2024. So we presented that in our budget workshop, so you would be aware, because we knew it would require council to take action by ordinance in order to amend the rates. The first reading for the ordinance was on December 17th, and then the final reading was January 2nd, 2025, and it was effective February 1st of 2025. The decision to increase the beautification fee, or the public works fee, was based on the overall operating, the financial condition of the Public Works Fund, which is an enterprise fund. In evaluating that, it was determined that we were not, the fund was not taking in enough revenue to cover all of the different services that are provided. And so one of those is solid waste collection and disposal. That customers pay $24 for residential, and then this was to increase, so the $12 would cover the other services, which you hear often called beautification fees. Those are the mosquito control, herbicide. We do some spraying rather than mowing. It helps keep the grass in spec. Animal services, street sweeping, and grass cutting. And so all of those services combined are provided to all of our citizens. And we determined several years ago the EMS fee that was adopted was based on 911 addresses. And so we felt that we wanted, that was I guess the most fair thing to do was to follow suit and keep it in line with that. And so we assessed it rather than based on the water meter. We looked at the individual units, where, the residential units. And that included bringing in 47 apartment complexes.
All right, here we go. Listen up.
And 4 assisted living facilities. And again, that's based on each one of these having a registered 911 address.
So that goes back to your posit last week about that, when we asked the audience, is it fair or equitable that each address is being charged this fee now versus each building or whatever, as it were. And it's pretty interesting here in just a second, because they go through the math here in just a minute, so bear with us.
Like I said, the fee went into place on, it was effective February 1st of this year. And I was not present at the last meeting, but I know we have definitely had some concerns raised, and so I wanted to just give the background. This service, it is not for solid waste collection. We are not asking anyone to pay for a service that they are not receiving. And again,
did y'all hear that? So that's an important point in all this. And I'm not saying I agree with the beautification fees, blah, 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 or whatever. I'm just saying, if I remember correctly from the last meeting, because I don't have it pulled up, one of their points was, they're getting billed for services that they don't use, and she is trying to correct the record here with that.
again, these are spread out throughout the city. Street sweeping, grass cutting. If there's a vicious dog, or animal services, they go out on scene, and so it is just the general cleanliness of the city.
Interesting.
Council?
Here we go. Listen up.
What was the deficit that we faced last year? Was it?
I know in 2023, we were looking at about 1.5 million.
$1,138,340.
Say that again, Angela.
$1,138,340.
And I may, 2023, it may have been closer to 1 million. I know the initial, once we finally finalized everything, it may have been closer to just the 1 million. But over the years,
The 4 million, the 4 million number, is that total over the last 4 years? There was a,
Possibly.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Which 4 million?
I thought Angela I may have been mistaken, but I thought Angela gave me a $4 million number.
What was the deficit in '24?
That was 24.
What was, I thought it was
1.1.
23.
And then 23, I think, was right at $1 million. We had projected, when we were planning for the 2024 budget and evaluating this, we had projected possibly upwards of 1.5 million, but I think it came in closer to 1 million.
So to summarize this, basically, these experts in governmental accounting principles and government math, basically we're losing money on the beautification side of Bossier. Let's put it that way to use their term.
Well, here's the thing. I look, I got to chime in here. If you live in an apartment, I mean, look, and I'm not condemning anybody from living in an apartment, and I'm not picking, that you're better or worse because you have a house or you don't have a house or you live in an apartment. I've lived in an apartment in Bossier. I remember when I graduated high school, I rented a house down in Old Bossier in Bubba Williams district off of Barksdale Boulevard. Lived there for a long time till my roommates turned into jack wagons and I had to kick them out. And then I couldn't afford the house by myself and had to move in an apartment. That's neither here nor there. But the point is, if I'm a family and I'm living in an apartment and I have a dog, the dog gets out, it's running down the road, and the city's services of dog catchers or whatever has to chase the dog, is the cost and expense of that, should that be borne by the people who own houses and are having to pay for services? No, it's not theirs. It's equally my responsibility, whether I live in an apartment or whether I live in a house.
Bingo.
So I don't agree that just because you live in an apartment, you should be exempt from having to pay, to cover the costs of some of these services. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that.
Right.
And
Well,
if that makes it unprofitable for an apartment owner to own an apartment complex, then I'm sorry. But the bottom line is it's just like what they say about this freaking tariff stuff. That's a cost of life. It's a cost of living. If you don't like it, move out of Bossier City. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm saying the evil thing. Don't live in Bossier City. But I mean, bottom line, we've got bills to pay, and it's not fair to pick who's going to pay it and who's not.
Let me give an example here. So Cassie's got a good comment. She says, I don't think it's right because the apartment complexes don't benefit from those services. but I'm not saying they shouldn't have to pay, but I think they could have been made a deal that bundles at least to the building instead of each apartment. In the end, it's going to be divided out per apartment, Cassie. I say that as somebody whose parents used to own an apartment complex in Ruston, not Bossier. But let me point
Okay,
out,
wait a
Cassie,
minute.
but hold on, let me finish. So I live on Hickory Ridge. I'm in the city limits. I have seen a street sweeper come down our street exactly 0 times in the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years I've lived here. 0 street sweepers. Now, is it right that I have to pay to sweep the street on South Bossier? Not necessarily,
Well,
but I
look,
don't disagree with those types of expenses for the city being spread out across everybody. So I see your point, Cassie, but I'm just saying that can go both ways. Not every service that another look. Should I be responsible for the sewer main that goes out in South Bossier that doesn't move any of my sewer or what? Well, I'm on well water here,
let me
so
well, let me let
I'm
me let
using
me
a bad
bring let me
analogy, but
let me bring this to another level for Cassie and for folks that live in Bossier City. So let me just play how, and God forbid this happens to you, but I got to tell you, these are considerations of things. It's no secret. I was a fireman in Bossier, but I can tell you, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say, I'm going to guess, and I don't know, I'm probably off, but I'm going to guess and say that a majority of our calls went to apartments or multifamily dwellings, like that. Oh,
yeah,
you went there a
duplexes or
lot, right?
whatever. Yeah.
For emergency services. I mean, well, let's talk about emergency services. The
Right.
cost and expense of going to the apartment complexes. I mean, if each individual apartment's not paying for those emergency services, but that cost is being borne by the residential properties, the ambulance fees, and the like, who's paying for the majority of that? But oh, by the way, if say the fire truck and the ambulance happens to be at the apartment complex that and somebody may be going to rip me here because I'm kind of getting out on a limb a little bit. I mean, but if the fire truck and the ambulance is there because for 100 homes that are only paying 100 families are only having to pay one bill for services, whereas every residential house in a subdivision are having to pay to have that services available. But let's just say, for instance, if the emergency vehicles and personnel are having to be at the apartments for somebody who's being covered under paying for one bill, so that increases the odds, and then you have an emergency at your house, there's a delayed response, and that delay, and in trauma, there's a thing called the golden hour. There's time is of the essence, and if you can't get that because it's tied up for the payment, of the odds, do you think that's fair to you when you're paying the equivalent of 1 to 100?
Right.
I mean,
Look,
is that government picking winners and losers? I think
Miss
that's government picking winners and losers.
Miss Jerry sums it up, I think, pretty nicely. She says each dwelling, I would say, whether that's house or apartment, produces the thing that needs to be beautified. We all share in that, which on face value sounds kind of socialistic, but it kind of is, and that's part of the American system in that these city services and resources are shared among the entire city. You know, um, so it sounds crazy that we're sitting here kind of sort of defending the city council and being against, not really, but not being on the same side as Link Coleman and the capitalists that have taken on the city council from time to time. But it's true. Look, they know they're just trying to get a better deal and trying to keep from having
Well,
to either A, eat that cost, or B, raise the rent. It's that simple. They know they've been getting by with this for that long. And I'm not saying that they
well,
were doing anything illegal or anything, but they know they've been getting by with it. And Now the administration's raised the rates, and they're trying to negotiate the best deal they can. And it's that simple.
And I don't know if this is appropriate to say or not. This just crossed my mind while we're talking about it, and when we bring up Lincoln Coleman. Now, there's a big long history with Bossier City and Lincoln Coleman, and there's some differing accounts of things that went out there. Now we have even on this show, we've talked about one side of the story, but from what we were able to glean from the records that were sent to us, both anonymously and, but what I would tell you is that I know from some personal accounts from an individual who is involved in all of that, that there's another side to the story.
Always two sides.
Could be put out there. That was a story that was favorable to. It was the other side of the story. It was the city side of the story, and I will tell you that there's still some missing links on that whole deal. But if the accounts that were told were accurate, Link Coleman was not exactly just in the clear here. I would point out that when we were fighting to get term limits here in Bossier City, where was Link Coleman?
Right.
I don't remember seeing any help from Link Coleman, but now all of a sudden, Link Coleman's showing up at a freaking council meeting.
Even better than that, and Sadal pointed out in the comments, and Amanda had it in her little spill. Where was Link Coleman and the rest of the guys at the damn city council meetings when they were discussing this? Where were they when they discussed the budget? Where were you guys then? Oh, it's not till you get slapped with a bill that you decide you want to come down there and raise Cain. And look, I don't blame you. You're business guys. You're looking at your bottom line. I'm all for that.
Well, but here's the thing. You've got the regular folk like us and like the majority of people watching this show. We got down in the trenches and we did the freaking fighting. I mean, yeah, Link Coleman filed a big lawsuit. He spent a hell of a lot of money and he won a case against the city.
Right.
I mean, but was he doing it to better Bossier City or was he doing it for his bottom line? I would contend there is a arguable debate that his why was not about making Bossier better, but it was about his bottom line.
Sure.
Our why, it was not financially going to benefit any of us.
No.
Our why was not going to benefit us financially in any freaking way, shape, form, or fashion.
Arguably, it has done the opposite in some respects because it pissed off a whole lot of people. Potential tech customers, potential mortgage customers. I mean, I'm just saying.
Ruth Pope Johnston, 3D or 5D? 3D or 5D? I'm not saying that I'm some rocket scientist or whatever, but I'm just saying I think you learned enough about me to know. But I'm just saying, where was Link Coleman before? Now all of a sudden that it again's coming to his bottom line and they're showing up at council meetings. I mean, it would have been nice to have had some support before, but when it wasn't there.
Yeah.
It wasn't there.
Any of these guys, Bill Alley, Link, Ty, all of you, y'all are welcome to come on the show too and discuss your side of these beautification fees or whatever. Prove us wrong. Where are we wrong in saying what we're saying? Again, it sounds crazy because we're kind of sort of on the side of the city. I'm not for raising fees. I'm not for raising taxes whatsoever. But in the end, if they're going to get imposed on us, it needs to be everybody's paying.
Look, I like Mr. Alley. I do. I think he is a nice person or whatever. But Mr. Alley might as well change the name of his apartments to the good old boy convent or whatever, because he has rubber stamped the good old boy stuff. I'll tell you a story. He owns some properties in Bossier. He told me when I ran against Jeff Thompson, he told me, he says, hey, he says, I went to him and he said, you could put signs on my properties. He told me where his properties. I went and put my signs up, and guess what? Good old boys called him. He calls me back and he says, Duke, he says, I'm going to have to ask you to take your signs down. He said, I'm going to have to, I'm not going to be able to be with you. I'm going to have to be with somebody else. And I asked him why, and he was like, well, I can't be with you. He said, it's nothing personal. It's nothing against you. I just can't be with you. Well, that says it's good old boy. The next thing I know, there's Jeff Thompson signs in there. He got the phone call.
Not standing on his principles.
He got the phone call from the Gob Network saying that we've got to oppose you, and we got to beat this uprising from this little shit back. And that's the way it works. And I'm not mad at him, but how dare he be mad that when the government is changing, he's going to jump up here and he's going to be at multiple council meetings in a row, because the deal's changing.
Oh, but they want to pay their fair share. They want to pay their fair share, Duke. That's a quote from the last meeting. Anyway.
They want the councilman in the city to continue to run deficits and let
all us pick up the slack.
Put that burden on every residential house in the city of Bossier. All the rest of y'all should pick up that burden. That's what they want. And that's bull crap. That's not the way. And look, if you stand with those guys on that, then you know what? Hey, more power to you.
You can always. It's kind of like it's kind of like the IRS. You can literally write a check just if you want to the federal government and donate to the federal government if you like paying more taxes and fees. I'm sure the city has a way that you can donate straight to the city if you really feel so inclined, and help all those guys on the front row out, help their bottom line by just randomly writing $100 and $200 or whatever, $50, give what you feel is right straight to the city. Go ahead. Help the city out. Help Bossier be beautiful.
I don't feel sorry for Mr. Coleman, because he damn sure didn't lift a finger to help us in our fight. And that's, we preach it every week on the show, talking to everybody, about staying involved. And when the people that are in a position to be able to change things and to do things, they don't lift a finger to help. And then the only time they show up is when it's about their bottom line. You know what?
Fair weather friends.
I got to tell you, somebody told me one time, I don't know how many people knew Angelo Rapolo. Angelo Rapolo told me one time. And if you know who Angelo Rapolo is, you know his history, you know the background. But Angelo told me, and it's some of the best advice I ever got. He said, Duke, he said, the most important thing you can ever do in this world is know who your friends are. He said, and there's a difference between them. He said, there's friends and there's user friends. The most important part is to know the difference between the two. He said, that's the most important part. And I have never forgotten that. And he's 100% correct.
Sage advice. All right. So that's pretty much the majority of the city council meeting. I mean, honestly, wasn't, anything that explosive that went on. I don't guess they got their subsidies. And so the fees, the beautification fees or whatever they're called, are going to stay the same. Did we want to go over this legislative session? How are you doing time wise?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. So I'm going to switch over to the legislative meeting, and actually I'm going to do the little live control click.
I did get a message that Hammonds and Maggio, which I think we covered that, but they walked out because they they have family members that own apartments or whatever. I think we did cover that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Cassie had put that up there, and then I showed it on the screen, and Sadal sent me a text message too to let us know specifically why they walked out. So yeah. All right. Do you want me to go to the timestamps or?
Yeah, you can do that. I'll tell you what I am going to do. Let me get my restream up here, and
yeah. And now I've got it on live control, so if you come in, both of us can do it. Now, is this the right one? The May the 6th legislative meeting?
no, it's
Hold on. Let me switch screens. Bear with us, technical moment here. Which one did I upload? The June the 3rd. Sorry.
Yeah, June 3rd.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Natural resources. I was on the wrong meeting. All right, let me switch around. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so this was the Natural Resources Committee meeting, and everybody watching this one, y'all may be like, oh well, this doesn't matter to me. Well, actually, it does. It matters to any one of you. If you have a home loan and you own property, you own a house or whatever, believe it or not, you have mineral rights. You unless you're that's a whole nother discussion. See, I'm opening up a can of worms, but I'm going to assume that everybody watching, you own your property, whether you own it by your loan or whatever, but you have the rights to your minerals on your house, whether it may be no bigger than the size of a mobile home. It doesn't matter. But I don't even know what this particular bill was originally about. But what's important about what you're going to see and what transpires is how kind of the sausage is made. So we're down at the end of the legislative session, and there's a lot of things trying to be pushed through. And in this case today, you end up having the governor come in, and it's really colorful about what takes place, and his words and the dialogue. So you have a bill that's been debated. The issue was out there publicly. Everybody has had an opportunity to debate it. And then in the end, there are amendments that are put on to try to get other things in there. We all hear about it in DC. We hear about it in Washington. And in this case, this is what you had. Well, interestingly, the amendments that were put in here were over some pretty serious things. How many of you have heard about legacy lawsuits? And of course, you've heard about carbon capture. There was a lot of things that were tried to push through regarding carbon capture that had some trouble. Well, they put them on this bill and tried to put them through, and they went through. And the dialogue that took place here was pretty good.
Okay.
So let me get on live review here.
Yeah, I've hit the live review button, so you should be able to do it.
All right. So starting out here, you've got Representative Ogeron, and some of you guys may remember Representative Ogeron. Ogeron, he's related to Coach O, of the LSU Tigers back in the past. He's come on our show a couple of times and talked on a couple of things. And I could have got him on tonight, but I know they are skint back, and I wasn't going to abuse his time on it. But Ogeron comes from down there on one of the coastal parishes. They have the issue of legacy lawsuits, and he was the most outspoken, and he explains it. And let's just start off with him and let him lay out what's happening. Here we go.
Thank you, Representative Gillray. Chairman Henskins, we have had that happen in this building before, though, haven't we?
We've been in that situation before that we've had it happen to us.
Yes, we have. Vice Chair Ogeron for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, baking the cake and putting in the last agreements once the pan's already in the oven is what I'm feeling right here. But, all right, going back through these amendments, I know Ms. Stadler said that 2 through 23 were technical, and I see number 13, which is real long, so it caught my eye, but what I see now is it is technical in that it primarily changes the added features of this entire package amendment here. So that number 13 basically talks about adding in, provide for carbon dioxide sequestration policy, the notices, and then the remediation processes along with the administrative process that Representative Zarang was talking.
It
So
makes a
I understand.
substantial
So
part of it
that's basically from yellow last week, it's good while I wasn't here, to today amendment. That's primarily the two big things that we're adding in is the carbon sequestration add-ins, bills that had some troubles in the past that are getting bolted onto this, as well as the litigation remediation process for oil fields, right? Can I get a yes? Is it?
So you have two remediation processes in here. You have Act 312 updates, and then you also have I'll call it the alternative dispute resolution process. So they're separate.
Okay.
They are separate.
All right. Then I'm gonna read you. Well, first of all, on the carbon.
So did y'all catch all of that?
A little bit of it. Kind of dumb it down for us a little bit.
Well, the dumbing down is you've got a bill pertaining to it doesn't even matter, but it's just something that falls within the realm of natural resources and environment. And it had the additions of two major issues: carbon sequestration and legacy lawsuits. And if anybody in the comments, if you want me to delve off a little further in explaining the controversies regarding carbon capture and legacy lawsuits and how all of that applies to you, we're going to get to that in this video because it does, and you should understand it, because it could cost you money. It could cost you dearly down the road. And you're either going to be informed about it or you're not. And if you're not informed, you have a 50-50 chance of making the right decision that will cost you severely down the road. So legacy lawsuits, you have to understand, you had a lot of companies, you hear about subsidence in the Gulf Coast. You hear about the companies, they drilled and explored for natural gas and oil in years past. And as a result of those, you have side effects. Major companies would go and drill these wells. And then once they have, quote unquote, perhaps got the most use of the wells, then they would sell those off to a secondary company, and they would have these things with these companies that they sold them to, exempting them from any liability. Mm-hmm. Well, then that secondary company would then either sell it again and exempt it again, or either that secondary company was a non-company that went bankrupt, that accepted the responsibility, and then you've got this big mess that ultimately comes around. And again, who ultimately at the end of the day do you think comes to having to own up to that problem? It ends up coming back to the taxpayer. That's you and I. So you hear about all these attorneys, and the oil and gas business say, a lot of oil and gas people say that we're not going to come in and we're not going to develop or do things because of the litigiousness and the lawsuits and this and that. And we don't, and you've had a lot of big settlements with legacy lawsuits, and there's some validation to that. Absolutely. And it's a problem that's been festering for years, and trying to find solution, a way to prevent, these big lawsuits and all this crap. And nobody's kind of really got the solution. But then all of a sudden, here towards the end of the session, you have a bill come flying through, and then all of a sudden there's this amendment to this bill that doesn't directly apply to this with a legacy lawsuit amendment.
Right.
And additionally, not just that, there's stuff regarding the carbon capture stuff and that makes some changes too. And what Ogeron is saying is said, look, I don't have a problem us talking about all this. I don't like the way that you're putting this forward, and we're just suddenly here all of a sudden debating this at the last minute. And when it gets down kind of the last minute, what they end up doing, or one of the ways that in legislatively that they do things, they will have a joint committee where senators and representatives of the same committees come together and they will debate on a finalized bill that then they will put forward to the House and the Senate to vote on, and they'll say our joint committees came up with this, and for the most part they all fly through with flying colors with no checks and balances, and there's really not a ton of debate, at least for the public, on it.
Mm-hmm.
So does that about sum it up?
Yeah, I think so. And so what I'm trying to see here is how, and granted, I've not seen the video yet, so clue me in if you can, but how do these legacy lawsuits with the oil and gas industry factor into the carbon capture? I mean, what were they trying to drive at with the carbon capture crap that's coming up?
You're going to have to repeat the question because Bo has suddenly decided that he wants to be a part of the show.
Oh, well, okay. So let me try, and maybe I'll phrase it better the second go round. How does the legacy lawsuit situation with the oil and gas industry, how does that square up to the carbon capture incoming industry?
Well, you have to think of them as being two separate things, but the interesting thing, and this is what Governor Landry, I mean, some of you are going to have different opinions on what Governor Landry says, because he makes a really, really solid point here in just a second regarding this. And he basically says, he calls out people you wouldn't think he's going to call out to be hypocrites on the issue. They're unrelated, kind of, sort of, but they are related because you're talking about the same industries. And I'm going to jump way ahead here, and I'm going to say, so if you understand the legacy lawsuit stuff, on one hand, oil and gas companies say, we're not going to come and we're not going to develop there because we're fearful that we'll get sued over legacy lawsuit stuff. But yet, where is all of the carbon capture stuff originating from? It's originating from the oil and gas industry. And who are they lobbying? They're lobbying the legislators to pass legislation out and help them. So if you're unwilling to come here and develop oil and gas, but you are willing to come here to deal with carbon capture and ask for help from the legislature on that, there seems to be some hypocrisy there.
Well, okay, that's a good point. It kind of, well, remarkably similar to the apartment complex deal, almost, on a much bigger scale.
So let's go back to the video real quick and let's listen to some more of Ogeron and let's get into this fast.
All right.
Trying to build different tools that have to be looked at all together. And all of the information that's presented here, we have been, I mean, it's 18 months. I know that there's constant concern about sort of the last second, but we have reports that are on the internet. I've continued to draft it, will continue to sit with anyone that's interested in doing it. There has been no intent to work in a clandestine manner in which to move these things forward. We want you to be able to see the entire process so that way you can think about the agency as one. The only piece that's not in here is the fee, because it was the way that it was started. But that's part of it. It's rather than look at it in individual instruments, you're putting it in one big instrument and saying, all right, these are all the different tools, so it's not a static state.
Nobody could argue with the whole comprehensive thing being laid out as a good picture. The problem I find is that we're bringing the full picture at the last minute, at the 11th hour practically. In other words, I started in January with my bill, started dealing with stakeholders and finding out the problems. Through February and March, whenever I came here, April, I had well-baked and ready to cure legislation. This is just being thrown together a little bit too quick, and I'm seeing my stakeholders basically complaining. Now, if we're going to pass this stuff as is and go into conference, we're going to have to really understand what it is that we're trying to pass here. You need to understand that this is not the best way to make legislation.
So and he's down there, and I want to say it's Lafourche Parish, and he's talking about, they literally, Lafourche Parish, I think it was Lafourche, is having a meeting tonight and determining whether, again, a proposal on whether or not they're going to file lawsuits against the oil and gas industry on this legacy lawsuit stuff. This is a constant thing kind of happening, and this legislation is going to it would even affect you individually if you have mineral rights, or there's aspects of this that would affect you individually because it makes some changes to that. So I'm going to jump forward here.
All right.
Representative Domingue, she had a comment here that was pretty colorful, and then we're fixing to get to Jeff Landry. So stand by. Here we go.
Okay.
It's very similar to Senator Lambert's amendment that was introduced. So that's the kitchen sink along with everything else that's in there, one holistic part. The indemnification language was introduced by the opponents to the original bill. That's correct.
Yeah, and down the bayou you call it a gumbo because we just throw everything that's left over in the fridge. Now sometimes it's good and sometimes not too good. Just depends. Today it's kind of smelling that's not too good, but we'll see how the rest of it goes.
I get it. I get it.
All right.
Okay.
They were pretty much all saying that the way this is going down is kind of stinking, and
yeah, well, it's I mean, well, like they said, it's making a gumbo instead of an all-in-one gumbo instead of a specific chicken gumbo or specific sausage or seafood gumbo, is throwing all of it together, which typically doesn't necessarily make the best gumbo. Mr. McCormick.
Yep. So Danny McCormick tries to get a question in here, but this is where things kind of get off, and Governor Landry comes into the room, and the show begins here. So let's just go from here.
But I do know that between the coastal lawsuits, the legacy lawsuits, and the highest severance tax in the nation, we basically destroyed the oil business in this state. So it's encouraging to see you address that. I do have a question. This weekend, to see if this advance notification helps us cure this problem. This weekend, I was informed of a large landowner that was bundling his mineral rights to sell in the parishes where carbon sequestration was going to be taking place. And my concern is for any buyers of that, I mean, with this and that, on your website, or do y'all have the ability for people to go look where these plumes are going to be in case they're, or will y'all have that, how's that coming?
And Representative.
So, he asks a question, and this guy ends up just deferring to Governor Landry to start talking, and Danny's question doesn't get asked, but the question is of monumental importance, and the question is of importance to every single one of you. So if you chose to sell your mineral rights to someone, and then let's say you, through eminent domain, were forced into a carbon sequestration area where carbon was pumped in, at a zone above your minerals, would then, as I appreciate and I understand it, you can't drill through the carbon. The minerals are trapped underneath this. But because you sold your minerals and then through eminent domain, those minerals were trapped, would that mean that you then who sold your minerals would have to pay who bought your minerals back that you sold them to? Would you be in default?
Very good. That's a good question.
That's right. So those are questions, and there's a ton of questions that will emanate from that are unanswered. And that was where Danny was kind of going, was on answering some of those questions. And how would you know? And what if you had sold if I had bought mineral rights? Let's just say I went and I bought all the mineral rights for out there where you live, Rex, and I had plans of just sitting on those mineral rights. It's an asset that I own, and I'm going to develop them when I so choose, maybe on my deathbed so that my kids would benefit from it, whatever, and that's a choice that I made. But then all of a sudden, some company come in and decided that, you know what, we're going to screw him. We're going to pump carbon in there as business to block him from developing those minerals so it doesn't hurt us. And I just out in the cold because I'm not going to be able to drill them and utilize that asset that I bought. Am I screwed?
That is a very interesting question. Honestly, this is the first time I've thought of it that way. Because essentially, yeah, you could block somebody off, I guess.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'd have to give that some thought.
This guy doesn't answer Danny's question and immediately defers to the governor, because the governor obviously showed down, and you guys have to understand, when you've got these things and the governor walks into a room in a committee regarding a bill, I mean, that's a pretty heavy thing. He doesn't do it on a lot of them, but he did it on this one. And that means that he's showing all of his weight, all of the weight of the office to make things go one way or the other. And he doesn't mince words about it. So let's listen to kind of what he has to say here.
McCormick, I'm going to make a note to answer that question because I definitely can, but I do want to defer to my boss, Governor Landry, to make some comments.
Governor Landry,
Surprise.
welcome to the committee.
Can I use the chairman's notes, Chairman? Look, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I do appreciate you giving me some time. I had not intended to come and speak to you all this morning on this issue. However, as we worked through some amendments late last night, I felt that it was important for me to come down here as well. I've been on the phone with members of the legislature since early this morning, trying to reach some common ground. And while it's nice to be able to pit the lawyers against the oil and gas companies, that is not what this is about. This has become an issue of property rights, landowners versus those that want to extract the minerals. Now, it is undoubted that no one, I don't think anyone, believes that I want to do anything to harm the oil and gas industry. I have fought for my entire political career for that industry and in support of that industry. This is an issue that has plagued this state. And the longer we don't address it, the more it plagues the state and the more uncertainty we create for both property owners and for oil and gas companies. I believe that the set of amendments that are in front of you are good amendments. The reason is no one really likes them. That is normally a good sign that we have reached equilibrium in this body. I've consistently said this session, the theme should be a balanced approach. And And I believe that the set of amendments before us brings us to a balanced approach. It creates a date certain time. It creates some certainty after that particular date. It also gives us an opportunity to go back and look over the next 24 months if we believe that we have incorrectly made some adjustments to the law. The failure to do anything only pushes or kicks this can further down the road. And so again, I get that not everyone here is happy, including me, because I should be at a press conference talking about the effects of the Super Bowl. But I came down here because it is that important. And I do believe that if we just go ahead and tackle this and put ourselves into a position under which we can create some certainty for the industry and set the ground rules for property owners once and for all, then what will happen is the contractual obligations between the landowners and the oil and gas companies will be modified based upon what we do today. And so with that, I would just urge you to pass these amendments and let us continue this work and get something done this session. Thank you.
Governor, will you?
All right. So he's for all these amendments. And, you know, I'm going to say a couple of things here. One, I'm going to say something. You know, it's obvious that Jeff Landry doesn't participate on shows and things because we have tried to get him on the show, but we can't get him because we don't criticize him. So I think the key is you have to criticize the governor to get him to come on your show. And I say that as a friend of Jeff Landry's. And, you know, but it's obvious that the only way you get his attention is you be critical of him. And in this case here, that's proven true because Joe Ogeron gets a little rough in here, and it's palpable that the governor's dander is raised here in just a second. But, you know, I would agree that what Jeff is saying. So he's saying about kicking the can down the road, and in his, you got to admit, in his tenure, he's taken some strong positions on things, whether right nor wrong. I'm not making a decision on whether he's right or whether he's wrong, but what I am saying is that in Louisiana, we have tried, and I think all of you would agree, we have tried this thing of moderation now for how many governors, you know, of trying to ride the fence, and none of it has worked. I mean, we're in no better shape. So it's just like on the lawyer thing and the insurance or whatever. Let's let one side or the other win out, and either they're right or they're wrong. I mean, we'll get to a faster resolution if the lawyers have it completely 100% the way they want it. You know what? We're going to find out either they're right or they're wrong. Yeah. Or the insurance wins all the way out and they get everything they want. We're going to find out whether they're right or they're wrong. And so to that vein, I'm saying that the governor is right. Let's put something that sticks to the wall and try it. It either works or it doesn't work. And rather than just saying, well, you know what, we couldn't get nothing done, we'll try again next year, and then maybe the next year after that, and the next year after that. I think that's what he's saying, although that's not the way that he said it.
Yeah, well, Miss Jerry says to kick the can down the road to put iffy legislation in place and then evaluate on 2 years that they screwed up is stupid. So she's kind of taking the exact opposite stance on it.
Yeah, but I appreciate that. That is the reasonable. Honestly, that's the reasonable view, right? And that is the view that we've been taking session after session after session after session, and we get the same results every time. Yeah. Every single freaking time, and whether Jeff is right or he's wrong, I think what he's saying is, you know what? Screw it. Let's just try something, and either it works or it doesn't work. Let's do something freaking different.
Right. Yeah. There's some merit to that stance as well. All right. So where do they end up on all this?
Well, I think we're at the point here, and of course, Joe Ogeron chimes in here, and this is where things get lively. So let's go back to it and let's watch Joe ask his question.
Your question?
I wasn't prepared, but I'll try.
Okay, well, okay. Vice Chair Orgeron, if you still, hang on, Vice Chair Orgeron, you have a question for the governor or for the governor? Representative McCormick, you have a question for the governor or?
I have a comment.
Okay, Vice Chair Orgeron, hold on 1 second. He was still live. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, I want to tell you thank you. I actually want to tell Speaker de Villiers thank you. Chairman Guyman, we've had a very lively debate about carbon sequestration. We were fairly much muzzled on the debate in the last 4 years, and we have spent 5 hours debating bills. We have lots more work to do, but I would just like to say how much I appreciate you allowing and the other leaderships allowing this debate to happen. That's part of the process, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Representative McCormick. Question, Vice Chair Orgeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, I appreciate your comments. I know you do well for Louisiana as a whole. Last year, I could tell you I was a little upset whenever you vetoed. The insurance issue has been a problem since for a long time, and I was upset whenever you vetoed that one of those bills last year. But I could tell you that it set the stage, the delay, the kick the can down the road, put us in a better position that we did a much better change this year. And from the little bit that I said before you walked in, the text that I got pretty much confirmed that the industry, those people that are driving our industry are just not happy with the current set of amendments explicitly from number 39 on, all on the litigation resolution stuff. So, you know, I just wanted to know if you were aware of that's really what's coming in right now. My phone's blowing up that they just they feel it's a little bit too quick, and I hope you could understand that if I put forth a substitute amendment, letting everything but that go through, that you understand.
Yes, I do. I'm looking for some notes that I have. I'll try to do it.
They're pointing out how this bill, the core of this bill, died in Senate committee last week.
I know, but these amendments resurrect a large portion of that bill. And I'll just go off the top of my head some of the things that we worked through. I mean, number one, we're finally setting venue, I know that, in one appellate court, which gives us some particular certainty. We are changing the burden of proof on the front end. I think that the industry wanted a change of the burden of proof when it came to the value or and I believe that the problem with that became that it started to call into question whether or not other portions of the Code of Civil Procedure had to be changed, which then could cause the bill to be locked up in additional litigation. So in order to not have that be an area under which the plaintiff's bar could use as a technicality, we changed that back. Let me see.
Got some anti-indemnity language that
I'm sure nobody likes it. I'm glad you brought that up, Joe.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about that.
Wind them up.
Let's talk about that. That is what has plagued this state. And quite frankly, I believe it's an ultra vires act. Because what it does is it makes someone promise to indemnify them for acts that someone else may or may not have, or in this case may have, or have been proven to have caused. Now let's just think about that for a second. I have to buy something from you, and then I have to promise that if you did something to that property that I didn't know about, that I find out later that you caused, I then have to indemnify you for that.
Y'all get that?
He's not wrong.
No, he's 100% right. I mean, and I know I saw you sit back in your chair. I don't know what the hell words he said. I mean, I might have to go back and listen to it, or either ask somebody, what did he say?
Between Orgeron and Landry,
the words he said, I don't know what he said, but anyway. But
yeah, the gist of it we could understand. So, and he's not wrong about it. I think the problem is in some cases trying to chase down these original companies which may or may not be in existence any longer or have any sort of assets if they truly did something wrong is the problem. But I agree with his principle that why should I have to indemnify you for something you may have potentially done, or vice versa.
And or you didn't tell me about it when you sold it to me, and you had me sign an indemnity clause when you per the contract, but you didn't tell me about it. So, let's let him keep going here.
Let that sink in. That has been the crux of the problem of this entire litigation that has haunted this state, is those indemnity agreements. And so if there is one piece that I will stake myself on, it is those indemnity agreements. And if the industry wants to come and talk to me about why, because when I wrote that indemnity provision, I wrote it to be both retrospective and prospective, so that we set the table once and for all on exactly what these companies, as the chain of title moves from one company to another, where the responsibility lies, Joe. And you're right. I'm sure the industry doesn't like it. The curious thing is, what part of the industry doesn't like it? Is it the majors? Is it just the majors, or is it a combination of both the majors and the independents? Do they not like it retrospectively, or do they just like it prospectively? That's a question. That's what I would like to see. No one has texted me, but I certainly would love the industry to text me. Where y'all at? Let's talk about the indemnity agreements.
Look, I just represent Bayou Lafourche, District 54. I vote my district. We haven't been involved in any legacy lawsuits. We had resolutions and votes on that in the council. Matter of fact, I think tonight they're going to try to take another vote to see whether or not we've changed our mind on it. Pretty confident that we have not. We don't bite the hand that feeds us in the oil and gas industry. But just know my concerns with this goes back to 3 meetings ago with last-minute substitute amendments coming in and making change. I just wish we would just engage stakeholders a lot earlier and not try to make last-minute decisions in the legislature. I thank you for coming. I know you're passionate about Louisiana.
I appreciate those comments more than you know, and I've been working on this since the deal fell apart last year. And one of the things that I've tried to do this session is try to get us out from underneath the dark clouds that have continuously fallen upon this Capitol when we address these issues. We did an unbelievable job on insurance and legal reform this year. This is, in my opinion, a piece of that particular legal reform as well. No one wants to see certainty in the oil and gas industry more than me. What is interesting to me, though, since you already, I'm going to really get myself in trouble, okay, is how on one side of the equation, the industry tells us that our litigation environment is so bad that they will not do business in this state. Yet in the same breath, they will sit and apply one application after another for carbon sequestration. They will come and do business on the carbon sequestration side in the same state that they claim the litigation environment is so terrible that they won't do business.
The reason is crystal.
All right, so I gotta admit, that's good.
That is why I wanted to show this video right here, because that is classic Jeff Landry right there. And that is a mic drop moment. And it is, he ends up here in just a second. He says, he calls it for what it is. He says, that is hypocrisy to no end. And he's absolutely right. You know,
He is. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Or in this case, not have your cake and then try to eat it. Anyway, one thing that I will say about Jeff in the interviews, that I've seen him give and all that, especially since becoming governor, but even before then, is if he believes something's right or something's not right, he is absolutely not afraid to call it out. Consequences be damned.
and that's the way that he has always been since I've known him. And, maybe that's why I have not been successful in getting him on our show, is because I haven't been critical of him for him to disagree with us.
Right.
So
well,
maybe I'm going to have to just start doing something to make that happen. But I'm gonna let's let him finish up here, and we'll close this out.
all right.
Crystal clear to me.
Why is that?
Because we have the primacy application, and we're the energy capital of
But I agree with you, Joe. I appreciate that, but you can't say that litigation is so bad in this state that you will not conduct activity on one side of the equation, and yet at the very next moment you say, but guess what? I need some help from you all to do the same types of activities on this side in the same litigation environment.
Predatory litigation.
That is the definition of hypocrisy.
No, that's the definition of being forced to work in a to go and play in the playground where there's bullies at.
No, listen. What I'm trying to tell you, and guess what? These set of amendments, while not perfect,
I thank you for your passion and response, and I yield. Thank you.
This is, I would just implore you all that if we don't pass something, we will continue to be embroiled in this. And it's not, and the problem is, I didn't hear from one, I want you to know something. This morning, I did not hear from one plaintiff's attorney. Not one. But I did hear from a lot of landowners. Not attorneys, but landowners. And that's why I'm here today, is to try to bridge the gap between the property owners and the oil and gas companies so that we can finally create some certainty in the statutes.
Governor, we thank you very much for your time and your passion and your testimony.
And I thank Representative Bossier as well for the questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
If you'd give Chairman Hinchkin.
You got to admit, that was pretty daggum good.
Yeah, that was classic Mr. Landry there. Right, wrong, or indifferent, he is going to tell it like he is. So got to give him that. All right. Are we going to continue on with this, or are we going to call it an evening?
I think we can call it from there. That was the high point of it. Danny is on point. He had some more really great questions and answers in that video. And if anybody wants to know how they can watch the rest of it, I can send them a link or whatever.
I'll post it on our Facebook page, and that way, look, folks, some of these videos are hours long, so you may need to scroll through them. Or a lot of times, what I'll do when watching these videos is I'll set the playback to be 1.5 speed or 2 speed or something like that till you get to a good part. But look, a lot of people don't realize that sometimes coming up with the content for the show and the stuff to talk about is literally having to go through some of these videos. And some of them are not entertaining, but you got to go through it to find the good parts, and that's part of the process, Yeah,
that meeting was an hour and 47 minutes.
Right.
And so, you had to scrub through a lot of stuff. The first bill in consideration in this meeting was actually a bill that Representative Mike Eccles, we've had Eccles on this show before, which pertaining to nuclear, small nuclear reactors. But it was another procedural thing being done that would complement Adam Bass's Senate bill, and but we didn't even cover that.
Right.
So
there's a
good
lot of
stuff.
content there. All right, so Cassie Rogers reminds us, thank you, Cassie, Sammy Wyatt. So I can keep this short and sweet. Let me give you my take on it, Duke. And then, of course, we want to hear yours. So I was at the Bossier Republican Executive Committee meeting last night. I've been sworn back in to fill the District 8 seat, which was vacant. So by the rules and bylaws and statute and all that, the existing committee members can appoint that. Also, let's see, who else was sworn in? I think Marriott's already sworn in, right? And I think Miss Ruth was also sworn in last night. Anyway, so Sammy Wyatt was there. Now, y'all may remember Sammy. He's Bossier City guy, ran for city marshal several years ago and all that. He's been in, among other things, I think right now he works for LSU as like a forensic investigator for various things. But anyway, so he has, if you haven't seen it already, jumped into the U.S. Senate race against Bill Cassidy. And of course, we've had Dr. Fleming on previously, who is also the current treasurer for the state of Louisiana. Of course, we had Dr. Fleming on the show, and you and I are big fans and supporters of Dr. Fleming, primarily because of his stance on term limits, but he's also pretty, what we consider, straight up conservative guy. So here's my take on Sammy. Now, full disclosure, I'm not like best friends with Sammy or anything, but we've kept in communication from time to time over the years, and I like Sammy overall personally, but I gotta say, and his answers to questions last night were just straight up talking points. I mean, I hit him with a couple of questions and literally asked him to be specific about some things, and he didn't have specific answers, just the general talking points memo. And look, I'm no fan of Bill Cassidy. He voted to impeach Trump. He's done some other things I don't agree with, so I'm no Cassidy fan. That's not it. And I'm definitely a Fleming fan, and I like Sammy, but he didn't convince me last night. Even if it were just Cassidy and Sammy Wyatt in the race. I mean, I wouldn't vote for Cassidy, but he didn't convince me enough to be really enthusiastic to vote for Sammy. And maybe he'll get better as the race goes on. But he just had generic answers. That was my biggest issue. What was your take?
There's some problems there. And as you well know, because you was present, I asked some specific questions that the answers were not the answers that should have been given, in my opinion. And I don't. Look, I am going, I tell you what, I'm going to bite my tongue, because I think that we're going to, at some point, I think Sammy's going to come on the show, and,
Sure.
We'll have him on and we'll talk, in which I think that probably, I'm going to not kind of give my 2 cents completely after I let you get out there on the limb. Me and you are not far off from what we think, in which I don't think we are at all. But I'm gonna kind of try to be a little neutral here, because I would like to see us put a debate or something together with all of these guys.
Yeah.
And I don't want to poison the well per se. And but I was not completely happy with everything that I heard, and I think there's some improvement to be made there. I'm not happy with everybody. I mean, I want everybody to be limited government and all that stuff, but it's just what it is. But I can promise you, I'm not going to be with Cassidy. I don't care if Donald Trump comes down from the castle himself to anoint Bill Cassidy, I don't think I will be able to be there.
On principle,
a-
I couldn't vote for him either. I agree 100%.
it'll be a tough road to hoe for me to get there. I don't know what it would take, if anything, could make me sway me to get there.
So, of course, Sammy, you're welcome to come on the show, just like all politicians or candidates are welcome to come on the show. Just let us know. Bring your A game, because we're not going to just ask you softball questions. We're not here to beat you up, because, it's not like we're completely pro Fleming and don't want to give you a fair shot. We try to be respectful of everybody, but make sure you bring your A game and no generic answers. And, we'll leave it at, and look, Bill Cassidy's welcome to come on the show too, but I seriously doubt that's going to happen.
Yep, absolutely. Not going to happen. Bill Cassidy's not going to do that.
No, this would be beneath him, way beneath him. So, all right, Mr. Lowry, I appreciate you hanging in there, and because I know you didn't have the best day or best morning, shall we say, the most pleasant experience this morning. So I appreciate you jumping in here, and as usual, us having our little soapbox for Tuesday night.
Hey, it was fun. Thanks everybody for watching, and we hope that it was beneficial to you. Hope you learned something.
Yep, I hope so. All right, Mr. Lowry, I'm going to hit the finish button, and we are out of here. See y'all later.